So welcome everybody to our webinar, The Post-COVID Workplace, a Secure Mobile Future, hosted today by me, Mike Taylor, and sponsored by Asavie. And we have with us Octavio, who's our subject matter expert. I'm a solutions specialist here at O2, and I've spent the last 18 years working with SMBs across all kinds of sectors. And since 2015, I've been really helping to bring a vision of the digital workplace to life for O2's customers. It's been an interesting journey. Over those 6 years, I've witnessed a slow but steady growth in our adoption of digital solutions. But in March last year, that demand exploded as businesses like yours scrambled to get a minimum viable offering in place to ensure that the workforce could continue to operate under challenging conditions that we've all dealt with both personally and professionally over the last 18 months. Nearly 2 years down the line, the worst of the epidemic, fingers crossed, is behind us, and businesses are now seeking to make those changes kind of semi-permanently to enable a workforce to continue to work flexibly. And this is a result of some key lessons learned during the pandemic. Productivity in many cases has increased. I think we were concerned originally that people would take the opportunity of working from home for the first time en masse as an opportunity to have a bit of a break, but actually we were able to see through the systems that we use that productivity actually doubled, and we had a really strong year last year. Expensive office space is in many cases no longer required, and we're seeing announcements from the likes of Santander and Nationwide that they're actually closing their major offices and allowing their employees to work from anywhere in the world. Employee engagement really improves in line with work-life balance, and sustainability is a big question as well. Of course, the fewer offices that are open, the more that we're working from home, and the less time we spend on the road, the less emissions we're putting into the atmosphere, and so it's tools that and issues that we're going to talk about today that are really going to help with those things. And so with the right tools and a solid post-COVID strategy, we can all prosper in this new normal that's before us today. And at the heart of these initiatives is the imperative to secure endpoints, that is to say, mobile devices, anything with a SIM card in it. Probably the most important tool in the armory for working flexibly, but the most vulnerable to attack. So Octavio is going to pick up the baton in a second and take you through this content. A couple of housekeeping tips before we move on. We are recording this call today for review and some training purposes. This is the first in a series of webinar that we're going to be hosting over the next 12 months. So we want to improve all the time. And can I ask that you can type any questions in the chat? We have Anton Davis, who's another one of our solutions specialists, who's going to be answering those on the fly. And then if we've got time at the end, we'll have an open Q&A where we can ask those questions through the chat, and then one of the three of us will respond with a hard stop at 3 o'clock. So without further ado, Octavio, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you very much to O2 for organizing this webinar. We're really excited to be here to share our thoughts about what the future of work means for all of us, customers, operators, and companies like Asavie, now Akamai. So just picking up on what you were saying, yeah, definitely, the future of work, we've been hearing about this for the last probably 6 months consistently, when we all saw that the world was opening up a little bit, little by little. And now we're seeing that, flexible work is a business necessity. It is here to stay. And it's not just the quotes that we have here in our slides. Is we can see it everywhere. We can experience it in our organizations every day. And there's some very key elements that we have experienced. And Mike, you actually said it. Real estate, offices closing down and allowing that flexibility for workers to work from anywhere effectively. And some of the stats that we have is that by 2025, only 25% of employees will actually be needed at the office. And this stat is really interesting because I think we gathered this one back in April, and I just saw another one from Forrester research yesterday that says, yes, this is going to happen by 2023. So in the space of a few months, we've already seen this is consolidating. Definitely employees are not going to return to the office the way we know it on a full-time permanent basis. And that's critical for everything we do, because organizations are also going to have to cater for that new employee, new type of employee. So the other thing that we're seeing is like, it's not just about office space, about optimizing real estate and so on. We're talking about attracting and retaining staff and the quality of the staff that organizations are going to be able to attract. As you say, you know, Santander and other organizations are saying, well, you know what, work from anywhere you want. And that is critical for any other organizations that says, well, you know what, we couldn't get software developers before because they couldn't come over and work here because the rents are so high. Well, now guess what? You can work from your home, and you know, we have access to all your expertise. We can get the best employees. By giving this flexibility, all of a sudden the retention rate is going to go up, and that's a big win for organizations. Do you want to move on to the next one? Next slide, please. So now the other thing is, we've also noticed, and you know, we're seeing these through different research papers and whatnot. It's not just about the organization and you know, maximizing return of investment. It's about the employee experience is coming to the fore. What we see is that as well as delivering an outstanding customer experience, organizations are already thinking about the future of work and the challenges it will bring in order to deliver an office anywhere. We're talking about going beyond letting employees just bring their laptop and a monitor home and setting up a VPN to access resources and applications. The critical aspect is, how are we going to deliver the working remote, the remote working experience, to ensure that employees have a seamless experience wherever they are. So the same experience that they had in the office, now it's required at home, on the move, on a cafe, at the airport, wherever it is that you're working. It has to be the same experience, whatever device you're using.
Do you know, quite a lot of the experience that we witnessed kind of last March and April last year was that companies were really trying to cobble together a solution and using things like remote desktop to jump into the PCs that were on the desk, and it was just a really clunky experience. I think we were really fortunate that we'd already adopted the likes of Microsoft Teams, and we were VPNing into our network, and we were able to almost immediately have the same kind of work experience as at home as we do in the office, and that looks like it's to continue as well.
Absolutely, and you know, it's really interesting. I think the timing of this webinar is ideal because now we're beginning to see kind of like the results of whatever was happened, whatever was done in serendipity during the lockdown months and year and a half. And now we're seeing that CIOs and CISOs are saying, you know what, whatever solutions we adopted during lockdown work for the time being, but in the long term, they're not going to deliver this office anywhere that we're talking about. We need to think more, you know, long term rather than just solving the problem that we have right now. And that brings me to the next part of this conversation, which is the future of the workplace, the office. What is the office going to look like in the future? So now, as well as the employees emigrating from the office, we've also seen, and it was already a trend before the pandemic, you know, software and applications were also migrating from the inside the perimeter to the cloud. And actually the best example, you just said it, Office 365. I actually had to Google this morning what Office was called before it was a cloud service.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. And that's, the best example of, everything is moving to the cloud, whether it be a private cloud, a public cloud. And some applications, are going to be left behind. You're talking about legacy pieces of software in some industries that, they have to stay in a private data center. That's the nature of business. But it's evolving. And that is causing a bit of a challenge for IT teams, because they have to ensure that this experience and these interactions between users and applications remain secure and productive, especially that now that we're saying that everywhere, that everything is connected. It's not just your desktop PC connected through an Ethernet cable to your WAN. That's last century pretty much. Now everything's connected, and as I said, everywhere is connected. Do you want to move on to the next slide?
I've just moved on. Do you want the one after that?
Oh yeah, I'm just lagging behind. No, I'm in the changing security landscape. I was just lagging behind a little bit. So, and this is bringing changes into the security landscape. We have a combination of factors coming together at the same time. On the one hand, we have the employee that used to be in the office and now is everywhere. And we also have the software that is moving away to the cloud. And finally, we have an employee that is not just accessing the resources from a single device. We have multiple devices. And once again, a piece of research that was published recently, it said that, at home, on average, an employee has 7 devices that he's using to access work resources.
Yeah, I'm looking at least 9 in front of me right now.
Yeah, and this is shocking to think, what that means for a CIO, for an IT team. 7 devices, and none of them, well, I'd say 6 of them are not corporate owned. What does that mean for security? It's mind blowing, really. And now the Office Anywhere is driving the need effectively to refocus. It's not just about, as I said, one laptop and one PC connecting to your WAN. It's just users and devices, and that's an explosion, really. Mm-hmm. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, we should have business and security just coming up.
Okay, and then as I said, during lockdown, IT and decision makers, decided to make certain moves in order to provide for employees working remotely. And as I say here, spoiler, business always wins. When you're talking about business versus security, you're always going to find that the needs of the business drivers, and we're talking about big ones such as digital transformation, cloud migration, and the ones that have been there even before computers, competition, innovation, and productivity. Those ones are always going to weigh more than the risks associated with them. Why? Because the risks are not in front of you. The risks are not something that happened to you. However, the consequences of ignoring these risks are massive. And we start by talking about leakage, data leakage. And once again, the statistics show that, credit card details leaked. The majority of them, and we're talking about 63% of them, come for small businesses being attacked. That's a massive amount of personal information that is leaving, seeping through the cracks of especially small and medium businesses. Loss of productivity, yeah, fair enough. Loss of business, that's when it really starts hurting you. 36% of businesses that were attacked in the last year, small businesses, didn't recover. That means they went out of business. Mm-hmm. There's no more for them. There's no chance of let's go back and think the security strategy again. That's it, they're gone. And then on top of that, if you manage to stay afloat, there's reputational damage. There's penalties that come from things of GDPR. If you're operating in other jurisdictions, there are multiple penalties that can be applied to you that can seriously cripple you.
They say, don't they, that prevention's better than cure. Never truer has there been a statement, because I'm afraid in many scenarios, if attack's been encountered, a cure won't benefit anyone. There's nothing more important than making security, putting security at the heart of your business strategy, and taking those steps to prevent it.
Absolutely. But apart from preventing it, and this is the kind of like the centerpiece of this webinar, is it's great to be proactive and have security in place. But we are all aware that there are only two types of organizations when it comes to cybersecurity: the ones that have been attacked, and the ones that don't know that have been attacked. And that during the pandemic, we saw a huge explosion in all sorts of malware, ransomware, phishing, and especially phishing to mobile devices. That one went through the roof. Why? Because users, they think they're still protected inside the perimeter, the corporate firewall. But when they're accessing their email, when they're accessing personally identifiable information through a mobile device that is not protected, and they click on something that they shouldn't, all of a sudden they opening, a gate through perhaps the network of their whole organization, or whatever information that they have in their device. It's huge. It's a huge risk.
So, I think from the government cybersecurity survey that's published back in April, I think that I read a number as big as 350% increase in phishing and smishing attacks. I bet everybody on the call has seen dodgy looking emails and texts come through to the devices, both on the desktop and mobile. And the temptation sometimes is extremely strong to click through just to see what happens. But that risk is absolutely on the increase, and only been driven by the pandemic.
Absolutely. So what can we do about it? As organizations, we always talk about cybersecurity, but I want to bring it further by saying, let's talk about cyber resilience. And what does it mean? Is a mindset of cyber resilience assumes that the organization is going to be attacked at some point. If not, they've already been attacked. So let's prepare this organization for an attack. Let's know how to protect it. Let's know how to respond and recover from these attacks. Let's not be complacent, because no single security strategy works all the time. Why? Because malware and cyber criminals are always evolving, and they're getting really, really, now you can get malware as a service. Who would have thought? Malware as a service, rent a kit and then attack whoever you want, pay by subscription type, pay by the amount of money that you're getting out of the organization that you're attacking. It's, they're really entrepreneurial, these guys. Mm-hmm. So in order to counter this, we have to embrace cyber resilience. We have to embrace a mindset that we are not just going to react to attacks. We're going to be prepared before they actually happen. And you have to do it all the time. So there are 4 pillars that we would see as critical to this cyber resilience mindset. The first one is manage and protect, obviously. It's involved developing the ability to identify, assess, and manage the risks associated with your network and with your information systems. And that's not just the ones residing inside your organization. If you have a supply chain, they're going to have access to some of your systems. You're going to have access to some other systems. You have to look both upstream and downstream. Then identify and detect by continuously monitoring the data leaks before anything significantly happens, before any significant damage. And we've all heard about cases of attacks that were only identified weeks or months after they had happened, and by then it was too late. So we have to shorten that period, and that's why we always have to be on the lookout of things that are not looking quite right. You know, as you said, you click on something and now your files are a little bit slower, or you can't access certain files. You know, there's always something wrong. And we have obviously solutions to help you with that. Respond and recover. Well, if the attack's already happened, make sure that you have a plan in place that will help you get back on your feet as quickly as possible, and, you know, by mitigating all the damage that's already taken place. And finally, govern and assure. It's ensure that your cyber resilience program is overseen from the top of the organization, but that it's embedded across all teams, all departments in your organization.
That respond and recover scenario, you know, is no mean task if you're trying to cope on the hoof. I've seen a couple of examples where, as a result of simply clicking through from a phishing email, that a business has been shut down for 2 full weeks of zero trading, whilst the network was completely rebuilt, and that was a ransomware attack. So it's good to have that plan in advance.
Absolutely, and you know what, we saw that here in Ireland as well. There was a ransomware attack on the health service, you know, the EHS, and it kind of like shut it down for about 3 days. But thanks to that response planning, the systems were slowly back, and kind of like after 2 weeks, they were back on their feet. There's still some, you know, aftermath effects that are still having an impact, but you know what? The system is fully working now. Information is flowing, patients are being able to, you know, to attend appointments, surgeries are taking place. So it's all about that planning, what to do when you get hit. So we have, you know, we have put together some 5 steps towards building cyber resilience, and number 1 is prioritizing cybersecurity. As I said before, you know, cybersecurity is something that is great and that some leaders will be reluctant to invest on, because they say, well, if nothing's happening, why should I put money? It's just money down the drain. And then something happens, and then they see why they should have done it in the first place. Well, let's be proactive about it. Let's invest in cybersecurity before, and let's build that castle and moat approach before anything happens. Engage at all levels. You know, when all these cybersecurity things started, we were always used to see it as the responsibility of the IT team. You know, you know what, do I have to change my password again? I'm just gonna type the same one again, you know, password 1, 2, 3. And now we're seeing that that's the easiest and quickest way to leave the door open. So we have to change our mindset, and it's not just the guys in the IT team that have to change that mindset. It's across the organization. Everybody has to be part of it. Literally, it has to be the culture.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm hearing a phrase, zero trust culture, and what that really means is that you can't rely on human beings in general to be able to behave with the same level of skill, or the same level of knowledge to be able to act in a security mindset. And so it's systems that will allow businesses to kind of passively enforce good working practices so that people develop good habits.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to the next point, which is cybersecurity frameworks. You know, cybersecurity could be a really daunting thing, especially for small and medium businesses. Why? Because sometimes you don't have enough resources, human resources, to be monitoring, to be updating software, etc. Sometimes there are organizations, we have customers where, you know, in public safety, where the sheriff is also the IT admin. And the organization is 25, 30 police officers. And, you know, one of them, well, you know, today you're looking after mobile devices. And that's really unfair to say, well, how am I going to organize a strategy, a cyber resilience or cybersecurity strategy, when, you know, I have another 20 million things that are more important to me. And that's why a framework actually helps you. The framework is some sort of a blueprint of what you have to do in order to protect your organization. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are some really good, solid frameworks out there. In the UK, we have Cyber Essentials, which is part of it's a government initiative developed by the National Cybersecurity Center. And, you know, you can take it as easy as you want. You know, there are 2 levels of certification there. Basically, the first one is self-assessment. They give you the blueprint, you adopt it and implement it in whichever you know, capacity you have.
And you can just do that online, right, Asavie?
You can do that online, absolutely. And you know what? The other thing is, for your customers that are bidding for contracts in the government, that is a requirement if you're bidding for a government contract in the UK. So that's helping your business. It's not just helping your IT. There are others, you know, the Cyber Essentials Plus. That one also comes with an audit. So that's when you are more mature along that journey. But you have a lot of other frameworks like the ISO 27001 or the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US. And that's when you really, you know, you really have an organization that is dedicated to cybersecurity within your own organization. So then the next part is develop response plans. So why? Because as I said, assume that you will be attacked at some point, and how quickly you get back on your feet depends on how well prepared you are for it. And the one assumption that you have to bear in mind is that no 2 incidents are ever the same. Even if it's a phishing attack and you suffer another one, the vector may be different. The base, you know, in this phishing may be different, and the reaction may be different as well. So everything has to come together. It's not just the IT, it's people, it's processes, and it has to come together. And finally, you have to formalize it within your organization. That's where we're talking about governance. And it has to be somebody's responsibility. It's not just like, well, the guys in IT, you know, they are in charge of it. It has to be something, you know, full-time job to be dedicated to IT governance and cybersecurity. And with that, you should be in a very good place afterwards. So now, where does Asavie or Akamai now come into play? So effectively, you may have heard of Asavie Moda before, or you probably are already one of the customers of Asavie Moda. So, but for those of you that are not familiar, what Moda does is we help organizations protect and manage mobile devices as part of a cyber resilience strategy, a program. So we're there in the first 2 pillars of those 5 steps that I was talking about in the previous slide. We're talking in the prioritizing cybersecurity and engaging at all levels. And what we are going to do is, because we're going to concentrate on the security, visibility, control, and governance. And the first 2 of them are actually the ones that are going to contribute towards your cyber resilience. So we're talking about you know, closing down the gap in the vulnerabilities by keeping visibility, full visibility of all the traffic, including the UDP, which is what we're actually using now when we're talking about video streaming, Zoom calls, Microsoft Teams calls. All of that is UDP traffic, and we also have visibility of that, and that's important because some of the solutions will not have that functionality. But Moda, it's not just about security and visibility. It's also about control and delivering kind of like a tailored internet experience for the office anywhere. And how do we do that is by applying certain policies that you can, they're really, really robust, and we're really proud of what we do in that sense, because we're not just talking about allowing or blocking access to certain websites. We're talking about time of the day. We're talking about content categorization. So if you want to block all gambling and social networks in one go, we can do that. If we want to do it by time of the day, by geo-zone, whenever you have international workers abroad, we have roaming controls. And finally, it actually allows you to help in that governance space that we're talking about. Make sure that your investment in mobile devices and technology and this remote work is actually delivering the maximum benefit that is possible by removing distractions, by ensuring that the right applications are being accessed by the right users within your network.
A lot of the conversations I have with about moda, Octavio, are around governance actually, and many customers do in fact have a written mobile policy as part of their governance. But unless you've got the support of a piece of kit that's going to help you enforce that, by the time someone's transgressed that policy, it's too late, and so the policy's not really worth anything unless you've got something to support. And the last thing any of us want to do, particularly whilst we're all still working from home and we're still dealing with the remnants of the pandemic, is to be pulling people into disciplinary rooms over straying onto a website that they shouldn't have gone on, or encountering a phishing attack that wasn't necessarily their fault. And actually the support of something like moda can really help people stop getting into trouble, but B, as we've said throughout this webinar, it prevents those things coming to the fore, because you've not got any controls, if that makes sense.
And yeah, absolutely. And there's internal governance, but moda also helps you, in industries, in regulated industries where for example, in our customers in the US, we have education customers that have to be compliant with the COPPA regulation, which is Children's Online Protection Act. And there's another one as well that basically says, in order for a school district to have access to grants, they have to, to give these devices, Chromebooks, to students, but they have to make sure, they have to guarantee that students are not exposed to harmful, or violent content. And how do we do that? Well, moda goes in there and applies a block on adult gambling, violence, arms, any kind of that content. You can block it straight away, and you can certify, you can guarantee, as part of that regulatory process, that children attending your school districts, accessing online resources through your devices, are safe.
And the same goes for any kind of public service that offers, the public access to devices. So libraries, for instance, enact exactly the same kind of tactic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have one of our case studies that we're going to talk about later that exactly provides that example. So just moving on in terms of time, how schematically how we deliver value is, if we have the use cases that I described before of the office anywhere, where the employee can be at home, can be on the train, can be in a coffee shop, and you have any SIM-enabled device, we're not just talking about mobile phones and laptops, we're also talking about routers or MiFi devices. And because our solution is embedded in the O2 network, that means that we can deliver the traffic through a dedicated APN that will, go through the moda filter, if you want to think about it that way. And that's where we apply all the policies, and we say, well, this traffic is allowed. Hang on a second. this traffic is requesting an unknown domain or an unregistered domain. We've never heard of that one. Better safe than sorry, block it. And that's how many of the phishing attacks work, because all of these domains are registered for 24 hours or less. So obviously, they're live, not that they're registered. And they're going to be sending the request to the device. And if you click on it and you don't have this filter, well, good luck, because God knows where you're going to end up. So we prevent all that from happening. And then once we see the filters, when we've applied all the policies, we can say, well, now where do you want to deliver that traffic? Is it on the public internet? Is it on your public cloud? Or is it on your premises network? And it's really quick, it's really simple. And pretty much customers can start seeing the benefit of the solution from day one. But as we said, when we started talking about cyber resilience, no single solution or no single strategy works 100% of the time, and that's why we talk about a multi-layer defense approach. We work really well with MDM Solutions or UEM Solutions, depending of how old you are in technology terms, such as Intune, Mass 360, Workspace ONE, etc., etc. And what we do is I said, well, we're not actually trying to do the same thing. We're trying to protect the devices and the network, yeah, but we're trying to do it at different levels. Moda is going to work on the network level, and the MDM is going to work at the application layer. And a typical example of this would be if you want certain applications to be always on your device, and sometimes the user may delete them, or they may intentionally delete them. Well, the MDM will make sure that it's deployed again and again and again. We don't touch that. What we do is that we ensure that the traffic that you want to terminate in your Microsoft Azure cloud always goes there. And if you want to block traffic to streaming sites, we're always going to block that at the network level. So the request may leave the device, but it's not going to reach its intended destination. That's how we differentiate the benefits that we deliver. And when you put the two of them together, in terms of security, you're going to have two layers of security protecting the device, protecting data on the device and in transit. And that's going to be a definite plus for the organization in terms of this cybersecurity strategy. And then finally, want to talk a little bit. We have a few minutes left to talk about the case study of the Leeds libraries, and this is exactly the example that you're talking about, Mike.
Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit there. It's one that's stuck in my mind.
But it's a very good example. It's actually a really good example because here we had a customer, an O2 customer, obviously. Leeds library that wanted to do something, at the time, quite revolutionary to say, well, what, we have tablets and we're going to give them to the community to bring up the digital skills in Leeds. But obviously, you have all sorts of expertise in these communities. And so they ran a pilot and they found out that they had I think it was a 5 gigabyte allowance per device per month, and they noticed that it was consumed within the first week or so. So basically that was denying the benefit of having the device for 4 weeks when you had already used it all up in 1 week. The other problem that they had is that when the devices were returned to the library, somebody manually had to go and delete anything that had been downloaded, reset applications, re-download applications that might have been erased. And that was a big problem. And let's not talk about the security risks of just lending a device, an unsecured device, to an unsuspecting member of the community that doesn't know what they're clicking. That was a big risk. So the solution that we put together was to say, well, all these iPads, we're going to manage them through the Apple DEP. We're going to protect the device itself, password enforcement, remote wipe, remote lock, with IBM's MAS 360, and we're going to protect all the traffic and enforce all the policies through moda. And that way, we're also going to, it's not just about the security. The additional benefit is that with moda, you can put a cap on the data that is consumed by the device. And in this case, I think it was done on a daily basis, so that your 5 gigs can actually last the whole month and you can get the most out of them. There was the reporting functionality that moda provides actually helped the IT admins to say, well, we're putting educational apps and educational resources available to the public through these iPads. Let's see how much of those are being used, by whom. So basically, you're getting a really, really rich, picture in front of you of how your devices are being used. What are the most, commonly accessed websites, whether it be the BBC or whether it be, educational resources like, Khan Academy. And let's adjust our policy based on that. And I think they saw a really, really powerful benefit of having this visibility, the security, and basically it was helping ultimately the goal is to keep the individuals connected all the time and to be improving those digital skills. And I think it's a really, really powerful message that we have here, a really powerful example.
Brilliant. Thanks, Octavio. That's been really insightful, and I hope that our audience today have found the same. We do have about 15 minutes left in the slot to take some Q&A, but before we go to that, just some key takeaways and next steps that I'd like to kind of wrap up with. And really, it's reiterating those 5 pillars. So number 1, prioritize cybersecurity before attack happens. If you don't do that and you're attacked, it's too late. You'll find yourself in a 2-week shambles rebuilding your network. Make cybersecurity everybody's responsibility, not just you as an IT manager or IT admin. It's everybody's responsibility. I think really importantly, number 3, adopt a cybersecurity framework. As we said, Cyber Essentials, it's out there online, easy to access. ISO accreditations, absolutely fantastic to add brand value. So go and get yourself a cybersecurity framework set up. Develop a response plan, absolutely critical, because sometimes, with all the best planning in the world, someone might get through at some point in the future. So develop a response plan and evaluate them all the time, make sure that they're up to date. And finally, protect your devices. Probably the most important tools that any of us have in front of us on a day-to-day basis, keeping us connected with our business and with our customers and suppliers. But they're also the most vulnerable. They don't sit behind your internal network. They're out there in the wild. Make sure that they're protected. So that's it from us. Opportunity for questions and answers. If you can put your questions in the chat, and Anton, myself, and Octavio will try to respond to them. Let's have a look at how we're going. Just waiting for the chat to update. Okay, we've got a question here from Matthew. How does it work when the device connects to Wi-Fi, Octavio?
So that's one of the benefits as well that we didn't talk about. Moda actually works on the cellular network as well as on public Wi-Fi. And what we do is in that instance, if you're connected through your mobile phone and you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi, we'll install a client, and the client will pretty much take over and do all the functionality and apply the same policies as if you were connecting through your SIM directly.
So that's done through the associated app.
Correct.
Excellent. At this point, we don't have any other questions. If you do have any questions, folks, please put them in the chat and we'll answer those for you.
We forgot to plant the questions.
We did. We did.
How do you manage to be so great at protecting devices?
Okay. Well, you must have done a fantastic job, Octavio. What I would say is, folks, if you have any further questions, or if you would like to learn more about how we can help your business with everything that we've talked about today, speak to your account manager and we can arrange a one-to-one consultation with the likes of myself or my colleague Anton or Andrew, all in the security and the compliance segment. So have a word with your account manager and we can speak to you individually. Oh, Paul Healy has a question. Can we have a demo of the solution? I would normally spend an hour doing a demonstration, but we can certainly have a look at the portal, Paul. Yes, we can. I'll share my screen again. Okay, so when you log in, you're presented with a really simple and intuitive dashboard. The first element gives you an idea of the devices that are currently connected and controlled by Moda. You'll notice that in this particular, and this is just a dummy account, so it's not a real account. There are 100 devices in this account, and at this point, only 34 of the 100 devices are actually being controlled, and that could be for a number of reasons. But you can get a real detailed overview of that by clicking on a simple link, and you get this kind of asset management view with the mobile phone number that's being controlled or otherwise. If you as a business have entered the name of the user, that'll be listed there as well, and you can see whether a device is currently connected to a network at all or being controlled over Wi-Fi, or there is another little icon that will indicate that it's being controlled over the mobile network as well. So you can get a real simple overview of your control status of your devices. Going back to the dashboard, we also have an overview of the threat prevention. So without the application, 98% of everything that Moda does is out of the box, and this will give you an early indication of the network security. And through the policies, you can, and Octavio mentioned earlier that things like anonymous domains, specific malicious websites are all blocked at a network level, and so this gives you an indication that all those devices are being protected. If you do have the application, you get the further advantage of having Wi-Fi Protect and some additional device security, which includes the ability to locate your devices anywhere in the world on a live basis and be able to remote wipe those as well. Also on the dashboard, you have an overview of your current data usage. The pale blue part of the chart shows current data usage, within the billing cycle, and it does work on billing cycle rather than calendar month, which is pretty handy, given that your bills from us wouldn't necessarily run from the 1st to the 30th. The black dotted line indicates the previous billing cycle's usage, and so you can see in this particular instance there's something going on in the business, and you can see how this provokes conversations and questions amongst the business, your internal business teams, and what's happening in the business. Are we suddenly being more productive? What's going on there? And you can see, in fact, that with this amber dotted line, you get a forecast of where you're likely to finish in terms of data usage by the end of the billing period. You also get a summary here of devices and how they've been connecting to the networks over the last month. And importantly down here as well, a prediction and a current view of devices that have been restricted due to the transgression of policies that you might have set up. And speaking of policies, we've only got a few minutes, but we can take a look at one of those policies. So when if you do adopt Asavie Moda, we do a lot of the legwork for you in terms of setting it up in the first instance, including a default policy. And you can see almost immediately, it's really going to be a simple process to set up a policy. These first bits, as we mentioned before, are your network security bits. So you can allow or deny, but we deny, or rather Moda denies as default, anonymizes malicious sites and unknown domains, and that's really at the core of preventing those malicious attacks reaching the devices in the first place. But down here you have various categories of types of domain content that you want to allow or disallow any of your users to access. So, you know, much of the time unless you're in this particular sector, I can't think of a good reason to give access to adult content. Or indeed gambling, alcohol and tobacco sites, again, unless your business is in that particular sector. So you can deny those, and you can see, in fact, you can be even more granular in the type of sites that you want to ban from the adult category. For instance, if you're an underwear retailer, then you might want to block all adult except lingerie, as an example. Big culprits of overage spend on data are things like streaming video, but many of us included, have training content and case studies stored in YouTube, and so you can think of this in effect as your blacklist, and down here is your whitelist. So I might want to block streaming video altogether, but allow YouTube. And I can do that with a simple entry of the domain and allow that in my whitelist. And it's as simple as that. There's a lot more to it. I hope I've just given you a little taster there. But again, if you'd like a wider demo, then don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager. Rishi's already put that in there. Ray Williams, does it do laptops too? You've answered that, Octavio, that's great. And Anton has added to Ray's question there. Are there any more questions from the floor? Okay, I think that's pretty much the hour up. I can put 4 minutes back in everybody's diaries. I hope you found that of use, everybody. Look out for messages coming from our team over the coming months for more and more webinars. We want to keep you as informed as we can about all things workplace and digital related. But if there are no further questions, we'll call that a day. Thanks for your time, Octavio. Thanks for your support, Anton, and thanks for your attendance, everybody. Goodbye.